to help. Other than that, keep working hard, keep studying hard, and let's get to our questions. 141. Experimental control is best demonstrated in which of the following ways when using a changing criterion design? First things first, picture in your mind what a changing criterion design looks like and what it does. With a changing criterion design, we're taking an already known behavior and trying to increase it or decrease it systematically. So we're stair-stepping it, right? If we want to demonstrate experimental control, what do we need to see? Well, we need to see that our behavior, okay, is going along with our criterion. If we're changing the criterion and the behavior is not changing with the criterion, we're not having experimental control. That's what we're looking for, okay? So A, if the behavior changes each time the criterion changes. Be careful. This is what they'll do on the exam. They'll use a answer like this, kind of vague, right? But looks okay. But when you think about it, if we're changing the criterion and the behavior is changing, does it specify the behavior changing with the criterion? No. Just because the behavior changes doesn't mean the behavior is changing how we want it to. If I increase my criterion and the behavior decreases, is that experimental control? No. So A is actually wrong. B, if the behavior occurs drastically above the set criterion, or C, if the behavior occurs drastically below the set criterion. We want the behavior to occur at the criterion. So if we are, say, decreasing smoking, and we start at 20 cigarettes, and our criterion goes to 16, we want our client to smoke 16 cigarettes. That's the idea behind the criterion, right? We want them to be at the criterion, whether it's increasing or decreasing. If it's drastically above or below, then we can't really say we have experimental control. So that leaves us with D, if the behavior changes concurrently with the set criterion. Perfect, meaning as we move that criterion, behavior is changing right along with it. As I increase it, as I decrease it, that behavior is just following the criterion. If I can do that, I can demonstrate experimental control with a changing criterion design. 142, how would you describe the trend of the data for days 5 through 8? This is a very simple question, okay? Easy graphing question, just a trend question. Trend is what? Well, trend can be accelerating or increasing, decelerating or decreasing, or it can be no trend or flat, right? Very clearly, days 5 to 8 are decreasing, okay? So how would you describe the trend of data for days 5 to 8? Easily decreasing. If you struggle with trend, variability, level, go review those. Those are very easy things that you're going to have to apply on the exam, and you don't want to miss those questions. Trend questions, variability questions, those are easy questions, okay? Make sure you know those, make sure you review them. 143, 3 sorority sisters all graduate from their master's program at the same time. One became a behavior analyst, one became a financial advisor, and one became a marketing consultant. The marketing consultant has a son with special needs and would like the behavior analyst to work with him in exchange for marketing tips. Is this arrangement okay? Well, first off, what type of arrangement is it? Well, in the eyes of the board, it's a bartering. When we exchange our services for other things, maybe other than money, we are bartering for our services. So is that okay to barter? Absolutely. Bartering is fine, but there are stipulations. In this case, marketing consultant says, I will give you marketing tips in exchange for you helping my special needs son. If the marketing consultant gives you an hour of marketing tips and you work with the son for 30 hours, is that an equal exchange? Not necessarily. And that's where the stipulation comes into play. If we're going to barter, the value needs to be about equal. So A, yes, as long as the marketing tips are equal in value to the behavior services. We want to do this to avoid things like conflict of interest, right? If they're only giving us an hour of marketing tips, yes, ethically, we need to provide the best services possible to the client, but if they're asking for 30 hours, doesn't really equal up. So if you're going to barter, you need to make sure they're equal in value. Let's read the rest of our answer choices. B, yes, bartering is always acceptable if both parties agree. Nope, remember, they have to be equal in value. C, no, bartering for services is never acceptable. Incorrect, you can absolutely barter for services with certain stipulations. And then D, no, the behavior analyst should refer the client elsewhere to prevent potential conflicts of interest. 143, Three sorority sisters all graduate from their master's programs at the same time. One became a behavior analyst, one became a financial advisor, and one became a marketing consultant. The marketing consultant has a son with special needs and would like the behavior analyst to work with him in exchange for marketing tips. Is this arrangement okay? Let's be very careful here. Ethical questions. This is where people go wrong. You need to do all your work on the question and really, really understand the information in the question. What is the first thing the question says? Three sorority sisters. So they have this past bond, this past relationship. So yes, they're bartering for services. So can you barter for services? Can the marketing consultant exchange marketing tips for services? Sure. Now, is there a stipulation for bartering? Absolutely. These services need to be about equal in value to the behavior services. So if the marketing tips, you get an hour of marketing tips, but you provide 30 hours of services, it's not necessarily equal. If you're going to barter, okay, the values of whatever you're bartering for needs to be about equal to what you're providing. However, is that even relevant here? Well, no. Is the arrangement okay? You're a sorority sister. What should we do if a friend or a relative wants us to provide services? Are we allowed to take on that client? No, we need to help them find other services because we're trying to avoid dual relationships. So A, yes, as long as the marketing tips are equal in value to the behavior services. This is why you need to read all of your answer choices because A looks pretty good if we skip over the fact that they were sorority sisters. Yes, they can barter if they're equal in value, but you're still engaging in a dual relationship, which isn't okay. B, yes, bartering is always acceptable if both parties agree. Not correct. C, no bartering for services, never acceptable. Again, incorrect. You can barter. What we're looking for is D. No, the behavior analyst should refer the client elsewhere to prevent potential conflicts of interest. Yes, you're already in a dual relationship with this person. You can help them find services. You can help them get established, but you should not take them on as a client. Tricky, tricky question. This is why you need to really read the question and absolutely read all of your answer choices. 144, as of the 2022 BACB ethical code, behavior analysts are not allowed to give or accept gifts based on what stipulation? Okay, what does the new ethical code say about gifts? Be careful with how this question is worded because it's guiding you in a certain way, right? It's saying behavior analysts are not allowed to give or accept gifts. Is that true anymore? A, behavior analysts are never allowed to give or accept gifts. It's no longer true. They've changed that in the ethical code for a good reason, in my opinion. You're now allowed to accept gifts under only certain circumstances. B, behavior analysts are allowed to give and accept gifts from supervisees, but not clients. Again, not correct. We are allowed to accept gifts from clients under certain circumstances. C, behavior analysts are now allowed to give and accept gifts from supervisees and clients. Okay, getting closer. Is C accurate? Well, to a point, but there is a requirement that we need to fit. If we look at D, behavior analysts are allowed to give and accept gifts from supervisees and clients that are less than $10. Now, D doesn't answer or doesn't show the whole picture, right? It's supposed to be gifts that are less than $10 in monetary value on an infrequent basis. But given our answer choices, D is going to be the best answer. This is why this question is a little tricky because at first it says behavior analysts are not allowed to give or accept gifts based on what stipulation. That's no longer true. The truth is behavior analysts are allowed to give and accept gifts as long as they're less than $10. 145, a behavior analyst designs an intervention targeting self-injurious behavior in teenagers with autism. During baseline, self-injury occurred 10 times per day on average. When the intervention began, self-injury occurred 2 times per day on average. The analyst withdrew the intervention to check for experimental control, and the self-injury increased back to 10 times on average. Which of the following statements is true? Let's not even think about the answer choices yet. Let's evaluate this question. What happened in the question? We had a behavior analyst who designed an intervention targeting self-injurious behavior. During baseline, self-injury occurred 10 times per day on average. When the intervention began, self-injury occurred 2 times per day on average. So the intervention appeared to be effective, right? The analyst withdrew the intervention to check for experimental control, and the self-injury increased back to 10 times. Looks like experimental control to me, right? Looks like a pretty straightforward withdrawal design. Now, is that okay? Should this analyst have withdrawn a treatment targeting self-injury? Maybe not, right? It was effective. Now we're back to the client engaging in self-injury. So which of the following statements is true? A, the analyst demonstrated experimental control. Well, they did demonstrate experimental control through a reversal design, which is great. However, ethically, was this okay? B, the ethics associated with this design are questionable. If you're going to target things like self-injury, okay, self-harm, violent behavior, you need to be careful about withdrawing an effective treatment, because now you've got a client who is now injuring themselves again 10 times. Great, you demonstrated experimental control, but ethically questionable. And then C, it is unclear if experimental control was demonstrated. Nope, not true. It was clear. Our answer is going to be D, both A and B. Again, why you need to read all of your answer choices, okay? Both can be true. You did demonstrate experimental control, but the ethics are definitely questionable. 146, you are watching NFL football on Sunday. A commercial for Taco Bell comes on. The commercial is advertising the new spicy, crunchy, cheesy bean burrito. After watching the commercial, you drive to Taco Bell to buy a burrito. The commercial functions as what? All right, let's be careful here, okay? Let's break it down. You're watching NFL football. The commercial comes on. The advertisement plays. After you watch the commercial, you drive to Taco Bell to buy a burrito. What did the commercial do? Did the commercial increase the value of Taco Bell? Did it make you want it? Did it signal Taco Bell was available? Did it encourage you to buy the Taco Bell after the Taco Bell was already available, or was it a consequence? Well, it wasn't a consequence, right? Because it's occurring after all of this Taco Bell to buy a burrito. Be careful with the prompt. What is the SD in the situation? The SD in the situation is Taco Bell, okay? Not until you see a Taco Bell is this bean burrito available. So the prompt would have to come after you seeing Taco Bell. This occurrence, right, the commercial comes before. So it comes before the SD, it's going to be an MO. You saw the commercial, it increased the value, okay, of the burrito. It established this behavior, it evoked or established the bean burrito. It evoked your behavior, right? It motivated you. Why is Taco Bell the SD? Because Taco Bell says, okay, now the burrito is available. The commercial doesn't say the burrito is available unless you had this at your house. But you didn't, so you had to drive to Taco Bell to actually get the burrito. You can be motivated to have something, but unless there's an SD, it's not available. That's the key difference between MOs and SDs. 147, Albert has a history of disrupting the classroom. In the past, Albert is sent to the principal's office whenever he disrupts the class. During a parent-teacher conference, Albert's dad says Albert really likes the school principal. What is most likely maintaining Albert's behavior? Tricky. Let's be very, very careful here. Albert disrupts the classroom, right? We're looking at Albert's behavior. So he disrupts the classroom. What happens? Well, Albert goes to the principal office. We learn that Albert really likes the school principal. So what is happening? Well, Albert is gaining access to this school principal in the office. He's basically being rewarded for disrupting the classroom. Now, you might say, well, he's being removed from the classroom. Yes, but based on the information, it's not so much the removal, it's what he's earning, which is access to the school principal. So we're reinforcing it, right? Albert's history is maintained, so we're dealing with reinforcement. The question becomes, is it positive or negative? Well, we just said Albert is gaining access to the principal, okay? So it's going to be positive. It's not negative, okay? Because it doesn't appear that escape from the classroom is maintaining it. What's maintaining it is access to the office and access to the principal. Now, we're going strictly based on the information given in the question, which is what we need to do. If this said Albert has a history of disrupting the classroom, in the past, Albert is removed or sent out from the classroom. Now we're talking about negative reinforcement. In this case, Albert disrupts class. In return, he gets to go to the principal's office. He gains access to the principal. He's being positively reinforced. It's a reward. Tricky question. Be careful. 148. What method of teaching focuses on individual mastery and self-pacing of instruction? Okay. We included the different types of ABA teaching because we think it's important that we know them, right? So if we're talking about an individual mastering self-pacing, are we talking about incidental teaching? No, incidental teaching is naturalistic teaching. Are we talking about precision teaching? Precision teaching focuses on fluency. Are we talking about personalized system of instruction? Yes. Individual mastery, self-pacing has to do with personalized system of instruction, or PSI. Direct instruction is more about the group, choral responding scripts. C is our answer. Personalized system of instruction has to do with individual mastery and self-pacing. Which of the following would be the best example of errorless learning? Errorless learning, what are we trying to achieve? We are trying to achieve the client engaging in the correct response without engaging in an incorrect response. Simple as that. How are we going to achieve that? A, Gina presents a field of 3 cards and gestures towards the correct answer after giving an SD. During the next trial, Gina physically prompts the client towards the correct answer. Gina is going least to most here. The gesture is not going to guarantee errorless learning. Just because I gesture doesn't mean you're going to engage in the right behavior. A is not a very good example of errorless learning. B, Dave uses most to least prompting. So if I'm using the most prompting required to get the right behavior, yes, I am using errorless. I might need to full physically prompt this client to prevent errors. But if that's what it takes to do errorless learning, that's what I'm going to do. B looks pretty good. C, take advantage of the errors your client makes and uses them as opportunities to learn. Well, no, we don't want them to make errors, right? We're using errorless learning. We don't want to take advantage of the errors. We don't want any errors. And then D, Diana verbally prompts her classroom to stand up when the bell rings. Again, a verbal prompt does not ensure errors won't be made. The best answer here to ensure errorless learning is using most to least prompting, meaning we're going to use the most prompting necessary to avoid errors. And then 150, if you were to conduct a conceptually systematic behavioral language assessment, which of the following targets would you most likely assess? Or that is a phrase, right? Conceptually systematic behavioral language assessment. What is that saying? Well, we want conceptually systematic, so in line with behavior principles. Language, so we're talking about verbal operants, and we're going to assess it. So we're looking for a verbal operant here, right? A, the volume of one's voice when speaking to others. What are verbal operants? What is behavior? When we talk about language and verbal operants in terms of behavior and radical behaviorism, what are we referring to? We're referring to the function of the language. The volume is the form. We're looking for a conceptually systematic behavioral assessment. So we're looking for the function. B, the ability to engage in interverbals with others. Well, absolutely. Interverbals is an operant, a verbal operant, right? The ability to engage in interverbals is the function of your verbal behavior. B looks pretty good. C, the appropriate use of syntax, not relevant to verbal operants. D, the level of articulation, again, not relevant to verbal operants. The one that's relevant to verbal operants, focused on the function, right, is B, the ability to engage in interverbals with others.